And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers back with you as we are each and every week, talking about interesting ideas and meeting some interesting people. We got one today that we just cannot ignore in Oklahoma.
No, it's a terrible problem we have. It's child abuse and deaths resulting from child abuse. The show we've entitled today is called The Healing Field, and we've got two people coming to talk to us about it, to talk about the problem, the recent ceremony that took place out at the Capitol, and a lot of what's behind the child abuse in Oklahoma.
I think people generally know there's a problem. I'm not sure people are aware enough as they should be that there's a really significant problem in this state with child abuse.
Yes, I think our guest will tell us that it's one of the most significant, if not the most significant problem in Oklahoma that we have in relation to children who are in foster care and who may not have made it yet to foster care. It is a very difficult thing that we just don't seem to have a good handle on how to solve.
Yeah, and we need to solve it. So let's get some answers today, some information and some proactive ideas on how we can help what's becoming a considerable concern for a lot of us here in Oklahoma, child abuse. It's coming up today on The Verdict.
Driving rain, blistering heat, and bitter cold. 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Chesapeake drills non-stop for natural gas on American soil. Chesapeake drills more new gas wells than anyone else, and from those wells collects the most drilling information and acquires more 3D seismic images, leveraging every efficiency to improve the odds of finding more natural gas every day with every well we drill. The better job we do of discovering bigger reserves of clean-burning American natural gas, the greater the prosperity of our nearby communities, our state, and our nation. And as long as there are more gas reserves to be found here in the U.S., we will never rest. Chesapeake. Natural gas wins the day.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Very pleased today to have back one frequent visitor and one new visitor. On my right is Ann Roberts. Ann is the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy and has been for almost 18 years. Hard to imagine it's been that long. She did her undergraduate work and her graduate work at the University of Oklahoma, and she's won many awards, but in 2000 she was selected as the National Child Advocate of the Year. This is her 5th visit to The Verdict, and welcome back.
Thank you.
On my left is a new visitor, Micah Stirling. Micah did her undergraduate work at Oklahoma State University in economics and accounting. She worked on various political campaigns as a consultant for a number of years. About 5 years ago, she went with the Exchange Club, and now she is the director of the Exchange Club Center for Prevention of Child Abuse. She was principally involved, as was Ann, in the project called The Healing Field. This is her first visit to The Verdict. Micah, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Micah, before we get to talking about the Healing Field, let's talk about the Exchange Club itself. What is it, who's involved, and what is it this organization does?
You bet. The Exchange Club is a national all-volunteer service organization. Their membership is around 25,000 nationally, and their members are active in their community in issues such as child abuse prevention, Americanism. They have a Student of the Month award where they help students get scholarships for college, so just a lot of things that they're doing.
Where does the money come from?
The money comes from the members.
Okay, and how many members in Central Oklahoma?
I believe we have 5 clubs in Central Oklahoma, and I'm not sure the membership, but several hundred.
Huh.
Now, is the membership increasing, decreasing, staying about the same?
We're holding steady for now, but I'm sure you know in the past few years it's been a challenge to keep those numbers up. People are sort of wandering off doing some other things with their time, so we're always looking for new members, and it's such a great club that does such great things. So,
How long has it been involved in trying to prevent child abuse?
the child abuse prevention issue was adopted in 1979. Here in Oklahoma, they opened the Exchange Club Center in 1988, so almost 20 years here locally.
Well, tell us about the center.
You bet. The center provides child abuse prevention programming in the state of Oklahoma. We have a lot of direct services in Oklahoma County. We do home visitation for families with highest risk factors for child abuse. We provide parent support groups. We do parent education for new parents. We provide parent education in high schools. We also do parent education for people that aren't parents yet to try to encourage them to wait. We do programming for clubs and schools just around child abuse in general to keep people informed about the issue. We also do some advocacy at the legislature, and we try to keep the issue at the forefront.
Tell me about the risk factors that you just mentioned. What are the
Absolutely.
risk factors for child abuse?
Well, the good news is that there are some consistent risk factors, so we know what to look for. We know the kind of people we should be helping. The risk factors include things like economic hardship, poverty. We see a lot of that in Oklahoma. A lot of our child abuse comes from that the idea that a family is overburdened, that in financial crisis they're uneducated or undereducated, they're unemployed. We see families with babies that don't have houses, that don't have cars, certainly don't have jobs. So until you get those very immediate needs addressed, you really can't even talk about being a good parent. So we go in, we talk about those needs, we help get the crisis under control, we put together plans for the family so that they can overcome these very immediate issues and begin focusing on providing safe and healthy homes for children.
Well, I'm kind of monopolizing this, and I apologize, but one other thing that
I'll talk
occurred
about it all
to
day.
me is how do you identify the families that need your services?
We have great resources in the community. A lot of social workers and nurses at the local hospitals will see a new family that they think maybe needs some help. They'll contact us, they'll tell the family about our program. We get a lot of referrals through hospitals. Other community agencies are a great resource as well. They encounter these families as they're signing up for state services or having some of their needs met at a food pantry or a dental clinic, those kinds of things. They see them, they're aware of what we do, they refer them to us. We also have a few self-referrals whose friends or family members have been through the program and had success with it.
Well, Ann, tell us about the Healing Field event that took place on
Actually,
September
I'm going to
20th.
have to throw that back to Micah. I actually had to be out of town last week and I missed it, which I was just devastated. But I read about it and it just seemed like an extraordinary event.
It was very touching, very, very beautiful and heartbreaking to see. We posted 1,400 flags, one for each child killed last year by child maltreatment in
What kind of
America.
flags?
American flags on the south lawn of the Capitol, and they really did stretch just as far as the eye could see. We also posted 41 Oklahoma flags to represent the Oklahoma casualties from child abuse.
You mean deaths?
Deaths, yes.
And all the things that she's talking about, the Exchange Club, the Healing Field events, how is this having an impact on your core issue, which is child advocacy? And
It is
preventing
one of
child
our
abuse?
core issues. And when I read the paper, and I'm embarrassed to say that I wasn't aware that Oklahoma is #1 in the nation in the deaths due to child abuse. Now you might recall—
That's per capita.
That's per capita. They have a ranking, so they do it by 1,000 children. And we are like 1.8, and the national average is 1.2 children dying per 1,000 children. And it's just a dire situation in Oklahoma. And you might recall the last time I was here, we talked about the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, which looked at the variety of issues that feed into child abuse, like domestic violence, mental illness of parents, parental substance abuse, and all of these things, Oklahoma ranks very highly in. And so when I go to the legislature, I don't just talk about child abuse, I talk about the full gamut of risk factors that we could probably make an impact on.
Let me ask you to focus on substance abuse. Is that a very significant factor in predicting possible child abuse?
Absolutely. And it has a lot to do with the family constellation and what goes on in the family. I was horrified to learn that not only substance abuse but domestic violence. There was a 13-week period in Oklahoma where every single week we had a death due to domestic violence. And it was usually concomitant with substance abuse. So if we don't get a handle on substance abuse and find ways to provide treatment for families instead of incarceration, when they get out, they'll just do the very same thing again.
Well, what do we do? And I know we're going to get into this in the next segment, but you know, as we get ready to go to a break here, what do we do? What's your message to people in Oklahoma who want to do something about this?
Yeah. Well, there's two immediate things. One is to volunteer. Like Micah said, there's a lot of opportunities for people to volunteer at their child's school, to mentor children, and to provide a measure of safety in those child's lives. Now, that's something that everybody can do. The other thing is that we do have mandatory reporting laws in Oklahoma, so that if you observe child abuse, there's a 1-800 number, a child abuse hotline where you can call and report.
Well, we're going to get in more to this in the next segment, but I'd like to know, what some of the warning signs are. If someone suspects child abuse, what should they be looking for? What should they do? We'll get to all of that. We're visiting with Micah Stirling of the Exchange Club, Ann Roberts, who's an advocate for children, nationally recognized in her field, and we'll be right back. You're watching The Verdict.
Shining is taking responsibility. At Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, we know managing your health care can be overwhelming, and it's our job to help you meet the challenge. By guiding, supporting, and showing the way, we encourage you to gain control. Because we believe the best tool we can give you is the confidence to take charge. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, shining through.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
We are back on The Verdict. Micah Stirling with the Exchange Club is with us, along with Ann Roberts, who's an advocate for children. Micah, take us through the process of someone identifying a family, a member, a friend, or someone they hardly know that they're concerned about something going on in another one's house. How is the alleged party addressed? How is this concept introduced to that family that people suspect something?
It's a very sensitive issue, particularly when you're talking about prevention as opposed to a case where abuse has already occurred. The way it works at our agency, again, we receive referrals from lots of nurses and social workers, so they're trained professionals. And the topic is addressed typically as parenting as opposed to child abuse prevention. And we really do view ourselves as sort of parenting experts. Who doesn't need parenting help from time to time? So we really try to normalize the programming and make people aware that everybody has issues with parenting, and we're there to help. We're there to provide a support system, which a lot of these families are lacking. And we come in as a very nurturing, voluntary program, and I think that's the key. We don't come in and try to tell them how to do things. We don't say you need to do it our way or you're going to get in trouble with the law. We come in and say this is our guide to parenting. If you want to be here, we want to help you.
What kind of staff do you have?
We have a staff of 10. They're all very well trained. We have parent educators and family support workers.
What's the difference?
The parent educators teach our parent support groups, our parenting classes. They address parenting to groups. Our family support workers are like caseworkers, and they meet with families on an individual basis in their home, so they really provide more intensive child abuse prevention programming. Our parent educators are in the community. Our family support workers are in the homes.
In the course of a year, how many families or family units would you be involved with?
We can see as many as 1,000 families a year with both of those programs.
And how many, for instance, last year, year before, how many did you
I
have?
believe we were at 1,200 last year with all of our parenting classes and our home visits. Now, our home visitation programming is a smaller piece. We see about 70 families a month, but that's much more intensive. We see them on a weekly basis, and it's a one-to-one visit. The parenting programs we reach a lot of people because we're teaching classes in high schools and technical colleges.
And you get invited by the schools to come, I guess?
Yes, we do. We actually have some grant funding for these programs, so we're able to provide them free of charge to public schools.
Who's the president of the Exchange Club now?
The district president right now is Bob Hester. He's from Oklahoma City.
What's the Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy in a sentence? What does your organization do?
We create awareness, take action, and change policy on behalf of the children and youth of Oklahoma. My primary role is I lobby on behalf of the children at the state capitol. And a lot of times it's looking out for how a piece of legislation will impact children and families.
And how are you received at the legislature? When they see you coming down the hall, do they all go into their office and shut the door? I mean, lobbyists have different reputations around there.
You told me that's what happens to you.
Yeah, that's my own problem. I'm sure she gets treated much more receptively.
I hope so. Well, they know that I speak on behalf of the children and youth of Oklahoma. In other words, I'm not a corporate lobbyist with a corporate paycheck coming. I mean, I just simply represent the kids.
Right.
And a lot of times I work on a variety of issues throughout one specific session. So I might work on child abuse prevention, but also on mental health issues. And they know that no matter what happens there, it's not a financial interest to me at all. It's just simply representing the best interests of children.
Do you typically work with DHS or in opposition to DHS? What's that relationship like?
Well, we try to work in partnership both with DHS and all of the state agencies that provide services for children, as well as legislators. And I'm very pleased that you might recall this past summer, there was a tragic death of a child in child care. And DHS responded immediately. They went to their commission and got some new rules in place that would give parents more information right at that child care site to know if there were any criteria that were not being met for them. So they are really proactive in that regard.
I would imagine that DHS, in a certain sense, can use you to help
Sure.
lobby for their issues because to a certain extent you're coming from the outside and you can either validate what DHS believes or not.
Right. Well, the budget is always the biggest issue, and we've had such a rise in child abuse, and so you might remember a couple of years ago we pushed for more child welfare workers, more people that could go into the homes and investigate what was going on and maybe have to remove the children from their homes to find a better situation for them.
Well, how are we in spending money on this issue? Where do we rank, or what measuring stick do you use to determine whether or not the state of Oklahoma is doing enough at the legislative level to combat this very serious issue?
Well, I'm sorry to say that we really have not made very much progress in getting more funds to programs like Micah's, and there are many programs throughout the state that are dedicated to working with young parents specifically, and it can be in the areas of not just specifically child abuse and parenting, but also the substance abuse issues and the like.
Is there a relationship with other states that seem to spend more? Do they have fewer problems?
You know, that's a very good question, Mick, and I haven't really looked into that, but that would be a nice argument for me to take to the legislature next year.
How many issues did you have in this last session that you were interested in?
Well, every year the Institute for Child Advocacy, with the help of 400 or 500 advocates throughout the state, develop a children's agenda. And in any given year we have from 7, 8, or 9 or so issues. And this year we had 10.
And what was the scorecard?
Actually, we didn't do as well as I would have liked. A lot of it had to do with budgetary items, and they were cutting taxes, which just took the revenue away from a lot of the programs that we were advocating for.
Micah, give us a minute or so on what do we need to do? Kind of sum all this up for us. It's a big problem. More children are dying from child abuse in this state per capita than any state in the country. Your time to deliver a message on people who want to take action.
I think it's critically important that we allocate more funding for prevention programs as opposed to treating and intervening, because we really can make a big difference with fewer dollars. I would recommend, as Ann said, you volunteer, use your resources to help an agency in your community with this issue. And finally, and most importantly, be a good parent.
Well, can they volunteer with your agency?
Absolutely.
And can they volunteer with your agency?
Well, we don't actually go out to the homes like Micah does, so if they want to do one-on-one work, I would send them to Micah's shop, but they can sure call me and I'll get them in the right place.
What should people be watching for if they suspect child abuse? What are some of the danger signs?
Well, you know, one of the biggest ones is isolation, and we have a lot of families who don't have the support systems that we grew up with our folks right around the corner. And so if you see a family who is isolated, befriending them, mentoring them, connecting them with services is a big help for them. And then the other ones are, a lot of child abuse occurs because parents don't understand child development. They expect a 2-year-old to be able to do what a 5-year-old does. And simply helping them understand the ins and outs of child development is the best thing.
Is the anonymous hotline where you report child abuse really anonymous?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So someone can call it if they suspect it, and their identity will be protected.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, we need to give that number then before we wrap this show up. I want to thank both of you for coming on the show. Micah with the Exchange Club, best of luck. And
thank you.
And we're going to give some information out where people can join and volunteer and be a part of the process. And Ann, as always, I know you're a frequent visitor on The Verdict, but probably not often enough. You continue to highlight some of the issues that are central to what Oklahomans believe in and what we want to improve ourselves about and how we think about ourselves. No state wants to think of itself as the most dangerous state in the country for children, and sadly, you could make the case that that's where we live. Kent and I'll be back with the final word after this.
Thank you.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're wrapping up a show in which we talked about child abuse, and an alarming statistic that I guess should be mentioned again is that Oklahoma in the entire nation leads the country in most child deaths per 1,000. That's per capita, but nonetheless 1.8 children per 1,000 residents dies as a result of child abuse. It's an alarming statistic, and one that these two ladies and a lot of other people are doing something about.
Well, at least there are a lot of people out there trying. I know there's an awful lot yet to be done, and I don't think there's any way we could have too many volunteers or too much effort to try to bring down that number. Somebody that is trying hard to bring down that number has been a guest on The Verdict before, and that's David Prater, the current Oklahoma County District Attorney. He was a principal speaker at the Healing Field ceremony out at the Capitol. And he has devoted an awful lot of effort within his staff to try to bring down that number. He sees it as I'll let him talk for himself when we get him back on, but he sees that there's a connection between the drug courts and the child abuse because of substance abuse.
Sure.
The more successful drug courts are, the more likely those parents that are subject to it won't go out and abuse again. Not that they won't, but it's just less likely. So he's got kind of a combined approach and is trying to do a lot here in this county.
If you suspect child abuse, there is a phone number you can call, and it is completely anonymous. That number is 1-800-522-3511. 1-800-522-3511. And don't forget, you can go on the internet and go to our website, theverdict.tv. Tell us about a show you'd like to see right here. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.